Chapter 1. The Beast That Bows to No One. The rain fell in sheets across the Thornridge estate, turning the packed earth of the trading grounds into a treacherous sea of mud. Sarah Ashwood stood at the edge of the crowd, her thin shawl doing little to protect her from the cold that seeped into her bones. She shouldn't have been there at all. Omegas weren't permitted at pack gatherings unless they were serving, but curiosity had drawn her like a moth to flame dot, or perhaps it was desperation. 3 weeks. That's how long she'd been back in the pack that had cast her out 5 years ago. Back when she was 17 and her wolf had refused to emerge during the awakening ceremony. The shame had been unbearable. Her father, a respected beta warrior, had disowned her. Her mother had looked away as the pack elders stripped her of her rank and marked her as Omega, the lowest designation, reserved for the wolfless and the broken. Now, at 22, she'd returned only because she had nowhere else to go. The human world had chewed her up and spit her out, leaving her with scars both visible and hidden. The pack had taken her back with cold tolerance, assigning her to the kitchens and the laundry houses, making it clear she existed on borrowed mercy. A roar from the crowd snapped her attention back to the spectacle before her dot. In the center of the ground stood the most magnificent creature Sarah had ever seen, a warhorse that seemed carved from shadow and storm. Its coat was the color of midnight, so dark it absorbed the light around it, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly amber that sent shivers down her spine. The beast stood nearly 18 hands high, its muscular frame radiating barely contained power. This was Stormbreaker, the Alpha King's legendary warhorse. The creature that had carried Cale Thornridge, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, into countless battles. The beast that, according to whispered legends, was more than it seemed, and no one could mount it. Sarah watched as another warrior approached. This one, a prime alpha male named Dorian, who'd always been particularly cruel to her. He strutted forward with the confidence of someone who'd never known true defeat. His hand extended toward the horse's massive neck, Stormbreaker's ears flattened against its skull. The warning was clear, but Dorian ignored it. The moment his fingers brushed the horse's mane, the beast reared back with a scream that sounded almost human. Hooves the size of dinner plates flashed in the rain, missing Dorian's head by inches as he scrambled backward. Dignity forgotten in the face of genuine terror, the crowd erupted in nervous laughter and muttered speculation. This was the 15th attempt in 2 days. Ever since the Alpha King had announced his search for a new stable, Master Someone Stormbreaker would accept warriors, and pack members had been trying to prove their worth. The position came with status, proximity to the king, and a generous stipend. More importantly, it came with respect, something Sarah hadn't tasted in 5 long years. The beast is cursed, someone near her muttered. No natural horse acts like that. Maybe the king should just put it down, another voice suggested. What good is a warhorse that won't let anyone near it? Sarah's hands clenched into fists beneath her shawl. She didn't know why the words bothered her so much. It was just an animal. A dangerous one, clearly. But something in those amber eyes called to the hollow place in her chest, where her wolf should have been. The crowd began to disperse as the rain intensified. Warriors and pack members hurrying toward the shelter of the Great Lodge. Sarah lingered, her eyes fixed on Stormbreaker. The horse stood alone in the downpour, had high steam rising from its coat. Magnificent and utterly isolated. She knew that feeling intimately. You there? A sharp voice cut through the rain. Omega. Sarah's stomach dropped. She turned to find Marcus, the head stable master, glaring at her from beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He was an older beta, weathered and perpetually irritated by her existence. Sir, she said quietly, dropping her gaze to the mud, since you're so interested in the beast, you can muck out its stall and bring fresh water. Maybe it'll gore you and save us the trouble of feeding another useless mouth. The casual cruelty barely registered anymore. Sarah nodded, waiting until Marcus stalked away before she allowed herself to breathe. She should have felt fear at the prospect of entering Stormbreaker's domain. Instead, she felt something else entirely. Anticipation. The stable was warm and fragrant with hay and horse. A welcome relief from the cold rain. Sarah gathered her supplies with practiced efficiency, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. She'd worked with animals before: horses, chickens, the occasional stubborn goat, but never anything like Stormbreaker. The war horse's stall was at the far end of the stable, separated from the other horses by design. As Sarah approached, she could hear the creature moving restlessly inside, hooves striking the ground with enough force to make the floorboards tremble. She paused outside the stall door, her hand hovering over the latch. Through the iron bars, she could see Stormbreaker's massive form, could feel the weight of those amber eyes turning toward her. For a moment, neither moved. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She should call for help, should wait for Marcus to return with tranquilizers or restraints. But something made her speak instead, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what it's like," she said softly. "To be powerful and have everyone fear it. To be yourself and have them call you monster." The horse went utterly still. "I know what it's like to be alone." Slowly, carefully, Sarah lifted the latch and eased the door open. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she stepped inside anyway, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Stormbreaker's ears pricked forward. The beast lowered its massive head, nostrils flaring as it scented her. Sarah stood frozen, barely breathing, as over 1,000 pounds of muscle and fury studied her with those impossible amber eyes. Then the horse took a step toward her. And another. Sarah's back pressed against the stall door. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. She raised her hand instinctively, palm out, whether in defense or offering. She couldn't say. Stormbreaker's velvet nose pressed against her palm. The contact sent a shock through her, entire body not pain, but something else, recognition, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. The world seemed to tilt and refocus, and for just a heartbeat, she could have sworn she heard a voice in her mind. Finally, Sarah gasped, jerking her hand back. But Stormbreaker only huffed softly and turned its head, presenting its neck to her in a gesture of unmistakable trust. Her hands trembled as she reached up, fingers tangling in the coarse mane. The horse was warm and solid beneath her touch, more real than anything she'd felt in years. Tears she didn't understand prickled at her eyes. "What are you?" she whispered. The horse's only answer was a low, rumbling sound deep in its chest, almost like a purr. If horses could purr. Sarah didn't hear the stable door open, didn't sense the presence behind her until a voice, deep and commanding and threaded with barely controlled fury, spoke from the shadows. "Step away from my horse, now." She spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim light of the stable, was Alpha King Cale Thornridge himself. And he looked at her like she was a thief who'd just stolen his most precious possession. Chapter 2. When Kingsnail Sarah's first instinct was to drop to her knees in submission, as every Omega was taught. But Stormbreaker shifted behind her, positioning its massive body between her and the Alpha King. And something in that protective gesture steadied her spine. She'd already lost everything. What more could he take? Cale Thornridge stepped into the stable, and Sarah's breath caught despite herself. She'd seen him before, of course, everyone in the territory had, but always from a distance, always as a figure of power moving through crowds that parted like water. Up close, he was devastating. Tall, easily 6'4". with broad shoulders that filled the doorway and a presence that seemed to consume all the air in the space. His dark hair was longer than fashion dictated, curling slightly at his collar, and his eyes were the same impossible amber as Stormbreaker's, the kind of eyes that saw too much, that stripped away every carefully constructed defense. He was dressed simply dark trousers, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with the silvered scars of old battles. No crown, no ceremonial regalia, just raw, undeniable authority. "I asked you a question, Omega." His voice was controlled, but she could hear the thread of something dangerous beneath it. "Step away from Stormbreaker. He doesn't want me to." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. Kale's eyes flashed. "Excuse me?" Sarah's heart hammered, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. Behind her, Stormbreaker snorted softly, its breath warm against her neck. "The horse. He positioned himself between us. He chose to protect me. That's impossible." But even as Kale said it, his eyes moved to Stormbreaker and something flickered across his face. Confusion and perhaps fear. "I was assigned to clean his stall," Sarah said quickly, trying to explain before he had her thrown in the dungeons. "Or worse, Marcus sent me." "I didn't mean to. I wasn't trying to..." "To what?" "Mount him?" Kale took another step forward, and this time Stormbreaker's ears flattened back. The horse released a low, warning sound that made every other animal in the stable go silent. "To succeed where 15 of my best warriors failed. I didn't mount him. Sarah swallowed hard. "I just talked to him." "You talked to him?" Kale's tone suggested he thought she was either lying or insane. "Possibly both, yes." "And what did you say to my warhorse that made him accept you?" Sarah hesitated. How could she explain that she'd recognized something of herself in the beast's isolation? That she'd felt, for just a moment, less alone than she had in 5 years? "I told him I understood," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "What it's like to be called monster." The words hung in the air between them. Kale's expression shifted surprise, then something darker. His jaw tightened, and for a long moment, he simply stared at her dot, then his eyes dropped to her neck, to the Omega mark branded there 5 years ago. Understanding dawned across his features, followed by something that looked almost like disgust. "You're the wolfless one," he said. "Not a question. Ashwood's daughter. The one who failed to shift." Each word was a blade between her ribs. Sarah lifted her chin, refusing to cower. "Yes, Marcus sent you here to die." It wasn't a question, and the certainty in his voice made her stomach turn. He knew Stormbreaker would kill anyone who entered that stall uninvited. "Probably," Sarah admitted. "But I'm still alive. You shouldn't be." Kale moved closer, and this time Stormbreaker allowed it, though the horse's body remained tense. "No one touches Stormbreaker without my explicit permission. No one enters this stall. Those are my orders, then punish me." The words came out sharper than she intended. "But don't blame him for showing mercy when no one else in this cursed pack has." Kale stopped mid-step, his amber eyes widening fractionally. For a moment, the mask of the Alpha King slipped, and she saw something raw beneath its surprise, yes, but also recognition. As if her words had struck something deep. "You have a spine after all," he said softly. "Most Omegas won't even look me in the eye. Most Omegas have something left to lose." The silence that followed was heavy, charged with something Sarah couldn't name. Kale studied her with an intensity that made her want to squirm, but she held his gaze, refusing to back down. Behind her, Stormbreaker had relaxed incrementally, the horse's breathing deep and steady. "Turn around," Kale said finally. "Slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them." Sarah obeyed, turning to face Stormbreaker. The horse lowered its head immediately, pressing its forehead against her shoulder in a gesture that felt almost affectionate. She heard Kale's sharp intake of breath. Impossible, he muttered. He's never not since. He cut himself off abruptly. Sierra glanced back over her shoulder. Not since what? Kale's expression had gone carefully blank, but she caught the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. Nothing. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. She could see it in every line of his body. What is he? Sarah asked, turning fully to face the Alpha King. Stormbreaker. He's not just a horse, is he? Kale's eyes snapped to hers, sharp with warning. That's not your concern. He chose me. Doesn't that make it my concern? He's a warhorse. Nothing more. But the lie was transparent, and they both knew it. Sarah took a risk, letting her hand rest on Stormbreaker's neck. The horse leaned into her touch, and she felt that strange resonance again, like a frequency only she could hear. You're lying. The temperature in the stable seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kale closed the distance between them in 2 strides, and suddenly he was there, towering over her, his presence overwhelming. She could smell him now, pine and rain and something wild, something that made her pulse quicken despite her fear. I am your Alpha King, he said, his voice low and dangerous. I don't answer to broken Omegas who don't know their place. The words should have crushed her, should have sent her scrambling back into the shadows where she belonged. But instead, anger flared hot and bright in her chest. Then why are you here? She challenged, her voice shaking but defiant. If I'm so far beneath you, why did you come yourself? Why not send guards to drag me away? Kale's eyes flashed with something primal. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw them glow brighter, thought she saw his pupils elongate like a wolf's. But then he blinked and it was gone. Because Stormbreaker is mine, he said roughly, and I protect what's mine. Then protect him from the warriors who want to break him. Protect him from becoming another trophy in someone's collection. Sarah's hand fisted in Stormbreaker's mane. He doesn't need another master. He needs what? Kale leaned closer, his breath ghosting across her face. What does he need, little Omega? Tell me. Sarah's throat went dry. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the pulse jumping in his throat. This close she noticed things she shouldn't, the small scar through his left eyebrow, the silver threading through his dark stubble, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. Understanding, she whispered. He needs someone who understands. Something cracked in Kale's expression. Just for a moment, his guard dropped completely, and she saw the weight he carried centuries of it, if the legends were true. Alphas live longer than normal wolves. Kings even longer. Go, he said roughly, stepping back. Leave the stable. Don't come back. Sarah's hand fell from Stormbreaker's neck. The horse whinnied in protest, tossing its head. But that's an order. Kale turned away from her, his shoulders rigid. Report to the kitchens tomorrow at dawn. Tell them I've reassigned you. You're not to work in the stables again. It felt like dismissal, like rejection, like every other time she'd reach for something only to have it snatched away. Sarah moved toward the stall door, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. But as she reached for the latch, Kale spoke again, his voice so quiet she almost missed it. He's been alone for 3 years, since my brother died. A pause, heavy with grief. You're the first person he's let close since then? Sarah turned back, but Kale had already moved to Stormbreaker's side, his hand resting on the horse's neck where hers had been moments before. His head was bowed, his shoulders curved inward, and for just a moment, he looked less like a king and more like a man carrying an unbearable burden. I'm sorry, she said softly, for your loss. Kale didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge she'd spoken. But as Sarah slipped out of the stall and into the darkness of the stable, she could have sworn she heard him whisper something to the horse words in a language she didn't recognize, ancient and filled with sorrow, and Stormbreaker's answering cries sounded almost human. Chapter 3. Shadows and Secrets, Sarah. Didn't sleep that night, Dot. She lay on the thin mattress in the Omega, quarters a converted storage room she shared with 2 other wolfless pack members, and stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment in the stable. The way Stormbreaker had chosen her, the way Kale's amber eyes had burned into hers, equal parts fury and something else. Something that had made her skin flush and her heart race in ways that had nothing to do with fear. The way his voice had broken when he mentioned his brother. "You're playing with fire," whispered Mira from the bed across the narrow room. The older woman had been wolfless since birth, her spine curved from decades of servitude. The Alpha King doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. "I didn't do anything wrong," Sarah said quietly. "Wrong doesn't matter to people like us. We exist at their pleasure. You do well to remember that." Myra rolled over, ending the conversation, but Sarah couldn't forget. Couldn't stop thinking about the grief etched into Kale's features, or the way Stormbreaker had pressed against her like a lifeline. She'd felt something in that stable, a connection that defied logic, that sang through her bones despite the absence of her wolf Dot as dawn painted the sky gray. Sarah rose and dressed in her worn kitchen tunic. The Alpha King had reassigned her, which meant she'd spend her days over hot stoves and dirty dishes instead of mucking stalls. It should have felt like a punishment. Instead, it felt like loss. The kitchen was already steaming when she arrived. The head cook, a sharp-eyed woman named Brenna, pointing her toward a mountain of root vegetables that needed peeling. Sarah worked in silence, her hands moving automatically while her mind wandered. "You're the girl from yesterday?" The voice made Sarah jump. She turned to find a young woman watching her with curious green eyes. She had the bearing of a beta, well-fed and confident. The one who touched Stormbreaker. Word traveled fast in the pack. "Too fast. I was just doing my job," Sarah said carefully. "Marcus says you enchanted the beast. That you're a witch." The beta moved closer, studying Sarah like a puzzle. "Are you?" "I'm wolfless." "I'm nothing. That's not what I heard." The woman leaned against the counter, lowering her voice. "I heard the horse bowed to you. I heard the Alpha King himself came to the stables." Sarah's knife slipped, nearly catching her thumb. "People hear a lot of things." "My name is Lydia," the beta said, ignoring Sarah's deflection. "I'm a healer's apprentice. And I'm telling you this as a kindness. You've caught the king's attention." "That's dangerous. I don't want his attention." "Doesn't matter what you want." Lydia glanced around, ensuring they weren't overheard. 3 years ago, King Kale's brother, Prince Daemon, died in battle. The king hasn't been the same since. Some say grief drove him half mad. Others say it's guilt. Sarah's hands stilled on the vegetables. Guilt? They were fighting side by side when it happened. Some enemy faction used silver-laced arrows. Daemon took one meant for Kale. Lydia's expression softened with sympathy. The king carried his brother's body back himself. Wouldn't let anyone help. And when he returned, Stormbreaker Daemon's horse wouldn't let anyone near. Not even Kale. Until yesterday, Sarah thought. Until me. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Lydia straightened, her healer's instinct showing through. "Because I've seen that look before. The one you had when you came out of the stable. Like you found something you've been searching for." She paused. "Just be careful. Kings don't fall for broken omegas. And the court would eat you alive for even thinking it." Before Sarah could protest that she wasn't thinking anything of the sort, Brenna shouted for Lydia, and the beta disappeared into the chaos of the kitchen. But her words, Lingered. The day dragged on in a blur of heat and monotony. Sarah peeled vegetables, scrubbed pots, and tried not to think about amber eyes or impossible horses. When evening finally came, she was dismissed with the other Omegas, her feet aching and her hands raw. She should have gone back to her quarters. Should have kept her head down and followed the rules. Instead, she found herself walking toward the stables. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The training grounds were empty, the warriors gone to their evening meal. Sarah moved like a ghost through the lengthening shadows, drawn by something she couldn't name. She heard him before she saw him, Cale's voice, rough with emotion, speaking in that same ancient language from the night before. Sarah pressed herself against the stable wall, peering around the corner. The Alpha King stood in the paddock beside Stormbreaker, his hand resting on the horse's neck. He'd stripped off his shirt despite the evening chill, and in the dying light, Sarah could see the full tapestry of scars across his back claw marks, bite wounds, and something else. Symbols, maybe, or brands. The mark of battles fought and survived, but it was his face that stopped her breath. All the careful control had been stripped away, leaving only raw grief. He looked devastated, broken, human. "I failed you," he was saying to Stormbreaker, his voice thick. "I promised Father I'd keep you safe. Promised you. And I let you die." Sarah's heart clenched. He wasn't talking to the horse. He was talking to his brother. 3 years, and it doesn't get easier, Cale continued, his forehead pressed against Stormbreaker's neck. 3 years, and I still hear your laugh. Still turn to tell you something before I remember you're gone. Stormbreaker released a low, mournful sound. "You would have liked her," Cale said suddenly, and Sarah's breath caught. "The Omega. She has your defiance, your refusal to bow." A bitter laugh. "She called me a liar to my face. You would have loved that." Sarah knew she should leave. This was private, sacred, but she couldn't make her feet move. "I don't know what you want from me," Cale said to the horse. "Why you chose her. What it means that you—" He broke off abruptly, his head snapping up. Sarah froze, realizing her mistake a heartbeat too late. "I know you're there," Cale said, his voice returning to that cold authority. "Show yourself." There was no point in running. Sarah stepped around the corner, her hands clasped in front of her. In the fading light, Cale looked like something from ancient legends, all hard muscle and primal power, his amber eyes glowing in the darkness. "I told you not to come back," he said, his jaw tight. "I know. Then why are you here?" He grabbed his shirt from the fence post, shrugging it on but not bothering with the buttons. "Have you come to spy? To gather gossip for the pack?" "No." Sarah took a step forward, her fear overridden by something stronger. "I came because I couldn't stay away." Cale went very still. "What?" "I don't understand it either," she admitted, her voice shaking. "But since yesterday, since I touched Stormbreaker, it's like there's a thread pulling me back here. Back to him. Back to—" She trailed off, unable to say it. "Back to you." Cale's expression was unreadable. He closed the distance between them with predatory grace, and Sarah forced herself not to retreat. This close, she could see his pulse hammering in his throat, could smell rain and pine and something wild. "You're playing a dangerous game." "Sarah Ashwood," he said softly, and the sound of her name on his lips sent electricity down her spine. "Do you know what happens to Omegas who forget their place?" "I've never had a place to forget," she replied, tilting her chin up to meet his gaze. "I've been nothing for 5 years. What's the worst you can do to me?" Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, admiration, and something darker. Something that made her pulse quicken. "I could have you exiled," he said. "Banished from Packlands entirely. Then do it. I could have you locked in the dungeons. Then do it. I could. He stopped, his jaw clenching. Why aren't you afraid of me? Because I've seen you cry, Sarah whispered. Because you loved your brother enough to break. Because Stormbreaker trusts me, and I think... She took a breath. I think maybe part of you wants to trust me too. Kale's hand came up, his fingers brushing her cheek so gently it made her ache. For a moment, his mask cracked completely, and she saw yearning there. Loneliness that matched her own. Then he stepped back abruptly, his hand falling to his side. Go, he said roughly. Before I do something we'll both regret. Sarah didn't move. Your Majesty, go. The word was almost a roar, and Stormbreaker screamed in response, rearing against the paddock fence. This time, Sarah ran. Chapter 4. The summoning 3 days passed without word from the Alpha King. 3 days of kitchen drudgery, whispered rumors, and sleepless nights where Sarah dreamed of amber eyes and ancient languages. She tried to convince herself it was better this way, that distance would break. Whatever strange pull existed between them, but the thread Lydia had mentioned only grew stronger. On the 4th morning, a royal guard appeared in the kitchen doorway. The entire staff went silent, spoons and knives frozen mid-motion. Guards didn't come to the kitchens, not unless something was very wrong. Sarah Ashwood, the guard announced, his face impassive. The Alpha King requests your presence in his study. Immediately, Sarah's stomach dropped. Around her, she felt the weight of dozens of eyes, heard the sharp intake of breath from the other Omegas. Brenna's expression was carefully neutral, but her message was clear. Whatever happened next was... Sarah's burden to bear alone, the walk through the Great Lodge felt like a death march. The guard said nothing, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword, whether for her protection or to prevent her escape, she couldn't tell. Pack members moved out of their path, some staring with open curiosity, others with barely concealed contempt. Kale's study was in the oldest part of the lodge, a tower room that overlooked the entire territory. The guard knocked once, received a curt enter, and stepped aside, leaving Sarah to face whatever judgment awaited alone. The room was exactly what she'd expected: dark wood, leather-bound books, maps covering every wall. What she hadn't expected was the fire crackling in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across Kale's face as he stood at the window, his back to her. Close the door, he said without turning. Sarah obeyed, her heart hammering. The click of the latch felt final. Do you know why you're here? Kale asked, his voice carefully controlled. To be punished for disobeying your orders? Partially. He finally turned, and Sarah's breath caught. He looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept since their encounter in the paddock. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his jaw was tight with tension. But mostly because I need answers. I don't understand. Kale moved to his desk, pulling out a leather-bound journal that looked centuries old. This belonged to my grandmother. She was a seer, could read the threads of fate, glimpse futures not yet written. He opened the book, his fingers tracing faded ink. Before she died, she wrote about Stormbreaker, about the curse. Sarah's pulse quickened. Curse? Stormbreaker isn't just a horse. Kale's voice was low, almost reluctant. He's my brother. The world tilted. Sarah grabbed the edge of a chair to steady herself. What? A witch's revenge, Kale continued, his expression carved from stone. 3 years ago, we killed her son in battle justly. He'd been slaughtering villages. But she didn't care about justice. She cursed Damon as he lay dying, bound his soul to his horse's body, trapped him between life and death, unable to speak, unable to shift, unable to do anything but exist as a beast. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Oh gods, we've tried everything. Every healer, every shaman, every witch who'd take our gold. Nothing worked. The curse is ancient, powerful, and apparently very specific. Kale's amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her shiver. My grandmother's journal says only one person can break it. Someone with no wolf, but a soul strong enough to see past the surface. Someone broken who knows how to heal. Understanding crashed over Syrah like a wave. You think I can break the curse? Demon chose you. Kale's voice roughened. He hasn't let anyone close in 3 years. Not me, not our father, not anyone who left him. But you walked into that stable, and he bowed to you like you were his salvation. Sarah sank into the chair, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. I'm nobody. I'm wolfless. I have no magic, no power. You have something. Kale moved closer, crouching before her so they were eye level. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his amber irises, could feel the heat radiating from his body. The journal says the curse breaker would be marked by absence, no wolf. No pack standing, no power in the traditional sense. But their soul would be pure, untainted by the violence that defines our world. I'm not pure, Sarah whispered, thinking of all the dark thoughts she'd harbored, all the times she'd wished harm on those who hurt her. I'm angry and bitter and human, Kale finished. You're human in ways the rest of us forgot how to be. That's what demon needs. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? Then my brother stays trapped forever. The raw pain in Kale's voice made her chest ache. And I'll have to watch him suffer, knowing I couldn't save him again. Sarah studied the Alpha King's face, the grief carved into every line, the desperation he was trying so hard to hide. She thought of Stormbreaker's amber eyes, the way he'd pressed his forehead against her shoulder, the way it had felt like coming home to a place she'd never been. Tell me what I need to do, she said. Relief flooded Kale's features, so profound it transformed him. The ritual requires 3 nights. 3 hours each night at moonrise. You'll need to be with Demon alone, speaking to him, touching him. The journal is vague on specifics, but it suggests the connection needs to be. He paused, seeming to struggle with the word. Intimate. Not physically, but emotionally. You need to see him. All of him. And let him see you. Sarah's cheeks flushed. That's not much instruction, I know. Kale stood abruptly, putting distance between them as if proximity was dangerous. The first night is tonight. I've cleared the stables. No one will disturb you. Will you be there? No, the word was sharp. This is between you and Demon. I can't interfere. Something in his tone suggested it was more than that being close to her was its own kind of curse he was trying to avoid. Your Majesty, Sarah said carefully, if this works, if I break the curse, what happens to me after? Kale's hand curled into a fist at his side. You'll be rewarded. Given status, wealth, land, whatever you want. And if it doesn't work? The silence stretched too long. Finally, Kale met her eyes, and what she saw there made her stomach clench. Then you'll have given hope to a dying man, and I'll be in your debt. It wasn't an answer, not really, but it was all she'd get. Tonight then, Sarah said, standing. Her legs still felt unsteady, but her resolve was firm. At moonrise. She moved toward the door, but Kale's voice stopped her. Sarah, she turned back. He was standing in the firelight, looking every inch the powerful Alpha King, except for his eyes. His eyes were pleading. Save him, Kale said roughly. Please. He's all the family I have left. The naked vulnerability in those words broke something in her chest. Sarah wanted to cross the room, to touch his face the way he'd touched hers in the paddock. To tell him she understood loss and loneliness and the desperate need to save someone you loved. Instead, she just nodded. I'll try. As she left the study, Sarah realized the truth. She wasn't just trying to save Demon anymore. She was trying to save them both. That evening, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Sarah made her way to the stables. She'd spent the afternoon preparing bathing, braiding her hair, changing into her cleanest dress. It felt absurdly like preparing for a courtship ritual, which was ridiculous, except it didn't feel ridiculous. It felt right. The stable was empty as promised, lit only by oil lanterns that cast warm pools of light. Stormbreaker Demon waited in his stall, his massive head turning toward her as she approached. His amber eyes held intelligence that was heartbreakingly human. "Hello," Sarah said softly, unlocking the stall door. "I know who you are now, and I'm going to help you. If you'll let me." The horse, the prince, stepped forward and pressed his forehead to her chest, right over her heart. And Sarah felt it again, that resonance, that recognition. Only this time, it was accompanied by a whisper in her mind. Faint, desperate, but unmistakably there. "Thank you." Sarah's hands came up to cradle Demon's massive head, tears streaming down her face. "You're welcome," she whispered back. "You're so welcome." Outside, the moon began to rise, and somewhere in the darkness, Cale Thornridge watched the stable with haunted eyes, knowing he was entrusting his brother and perhaps his own damaged heart to the most unlikely savior in all the territory, a broken Omega who somehow held all their fates in her scarred hands. Chapter 5. The first night, the moonlight streaming through the stable's high windows turned everything silver in shadow. Sarah sat in the straw beside Demon, her back against the stall wall, one hand resting on his neck. His breathing had synchronized with hers, deep and steady, as if they were two parts of the same being. 3 hours. That's what the ritual required. 3 hours of connection, of seeing and being seen. Sarah had no idea how to fill that time. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say," she admitted quietly. Cale's grandmother wasn't exactly specific. "Talk to you, touch you, let you see me." She laughed softly, the sound edged with nervousness. "I'm not very interesting. My life has been rather pathetic, if I'm being honest." Damon shifted, lowering himself to the ground beside her, a gesture of attentiveness that was distinctly human. His amber eyes never left her face. "All right," Sarah said, taking a breath. "I suppose if you're going to see my soul, you should know who I am. Or who I was supposed to be." The words came slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She told him about her childhood, the daughter of a respected beta warrior and his gentle mate. How she'd been bright and confident, certain her Wolf would be strong when her awakening came. "I remember standing in the ceremonial circle on my 17th birthday," she said, her voice distant with memory. "The whole pack watching. The full moon overhead. The elders chanting. I could feel the magic building, could feel something rising inside me. I was so sure." Her throat tightened. Demon made a soft sound, pressing closer. But nothing happened. The magic peaked and faded, and I was still just me, still human, still broken. Sarah's fingers twisted in his mane. My father's face, I'll never forget the shame in his eyes. My mother tried to comfort me, but even she couldn't hide her disappointment. "I'm sorry," a voice whispered in her mind, Demon's voice, achingly gentle. Sarah's breath hitched. "Can you hear me? When I think at you?" Faintly, as if. Through water dots, she focused her thoughts, pushing them toward him deliberately. "Then you know I understand what it's like. To be trapped in a body that won't do what it's supposed to. To have everyone look at you and see only what's missing." The connection flared stronger, and suddenly she felt his emotions: grief, yes, but also rage. Frustration so profound it made her gasp. 3 years of being unable to speak, unable to explain, unable to be himself. "Oh, Demon," she whispered aloud, wrapping her arms around his massive neck. "I'm so sorry." At least I could still speak, still be seen as human, even if not pack. "But you, invisible," His thought came through clearly now. Everyone looks at me and sees a horse. Even Kale, especially Kale. He mourns who I was, but can't see who I still am. He loves you, Sarah said. He's destroying himself trying to save you. He's destroying himself with guilt. Demon's tone was complicated love and exasperation tangled together. He thinks he failed me. Thinks if he'd been faster, stronger, better, I wouldn't be cursed. But the arrow was meant for his heart. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. That's what love is, isn't it? Choosing someone else's life over your own? Have you ever loved like that? The question hung in the moonlit air. Sarah thought of her parents who'd turned away, of friends who'd abandoned her, of 5 years spent utterly alone. No, she admitted. I've never had anyone who'd choose me first. Never been worth saving. You're saving me. Demon's thought was fierce. That makes you worth everything. Something in Sarah's chest cracked open. She'd spent so long believing she was worthless, broken beyond repair. But here, in the stable, with a cursed prince who understood loss and isolation, she felt seen in a way she never had before. Tell me about you, she said, settling more comfortably against his warm bulk. Who were you before the curse? Who are you still underneath? Demon's memories flooded through their connection, not in words, but in feelings and images. A wild boy racing through forests, laughing as Kale chased behind. 2 brothers sparring in training yards, the clash of practiced swords and good-natured insults. Demon had been the younger, the reckless one. All charm and impulse where Kale was control and duty. He was always trying to protect me. Demon shared, affection warming his tone. Even when we were pups. I'd get into trouble and Kale would take the blame. Our father would lecture him about responsibility and he'd just stand there and accept it. You were close. We were everything to each other. After Mother died, it was just us and Father. And Father was distant, broken by grief. A pause. I swore I'd never let Kale shoulder burdens alone. Then I went and became the biggest burden of all. You're not a burden, Sarah said firmly. You're a person who's been hurt. There's a difference, is there? I can't help him rule. Can't fight beside him. Can't even tell him I'm still here, still his brother. Frustration rolled through their bond. Do you know what it's like? To watch him grieve every day and be unable to comfort him? Yes, Sarah whispered. I watched my parents mourn the daughter they thought they'd have. The strong shifter who'd make them proud. I stood right in front of them, and they looked through me like I was a ghost. Then you understand, Demon said softly. We're both ghosts. Both invisible. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But I see you. And you see me. The connection between them pulsed with warmth, with recognition. Demon shifted, his head coming to rest in her lap, a gesture of trust that made her throat tight. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming. There's something else, Demon said, his tone shifting to something more uncertain. Something I need to tell you about Kale. Sarah's heart skipped. What about him? He's not sleeping, not eating properly. The pack thinks he's just grieving, but it's more than that. Demon's worry was palpable. The guilt is eating him alive. He's made himself so hard, so cold. I barely recognize him sometimes. He showed me his grief, Sarah said quietly, in the paddock before he knew I was there. He was talking to you and She paused, remembering the devastation in Kale's voice. He was broken. He lets no one see that. No one but you. There was something significant in Demon's tone. Why do you think that is? Sarah's cheeks flushed. I don't know, don't you? Demon pressed gently. I've been watching him watch you. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's paying attention. The way his control slips when you're near. He's the Alpha King, I'm an Omega. A wolfless nothing. But even as she said it, Sarah remembered the way Cale's fingers had brushed her cheek. The yearning in his eyes before he'd forced himself to step away that my brother has spent 3 years drowning in duty and grief. You're the first person who's made him feel anything else. Demon's thoughts were knowing, almost amused. And you're not nothing, Sarah Ashwood. You're the woman who walked into my prison and saw me, who defied an alpha king because it was right, who's sitting here in the middle of the night, trying to save a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore, Sarah said, her fingers gentle in his mane. No, Damon agreed. We're not. The hours passed in a blur of shared memories and quiet conversation. Demon told her about battles fought and won, about the weight of being a prince, about the woman he loved who'd married another when he didn't return. Sarah told him about her time in the human world, about working 3 jobs to survive, about the loneliness that had become her constant companion. They talked about fear and courage, about what it meant to be whole when the world said you were broken, when the moon reached its zenith and began its descent. Sarah felt the ritual's magic settling around them like a blanket, not dramatic or painful. Just a gentle rightness, as if pieces of a puzzle were slowly clicking into place. Thank you, Demon whispered as the first hour ended. For seeing me, for staying. I'll be here tomorrow night too, Sarah promised. And the night after, however long it takes, and if it doesn't work. Sarah pressed her forehead against his, feeling the warmth of his breath. Then I'll still be your friend. You won't be invisible anymore. I swear it. The gratitude that flooded through their bond made her eyes sting with tears. When Sarah finally left the stable, the sky was just beginning to lighten with pre-dawn gray. Her body ached from sitting on the hard ground, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She didn't notice the figure standing in the shadows near the paddock fence. Didn't see the way Cale Thornridge watched her leave, his expression caught between hope and something that looked dangerously like longing, but Demon noticed. And as Sarah disappeared into the lodge, the cursed prince sent a single thought to his brother across the distance. She's special. Cale, don't let her go. In the darkness. The Alpha King closed his eyes and didn't answer. Chapter 6. Fractures in the court. Sarah woke to shouting. She bolted upright on her thin mattress, heart racing as angry voices echoed through the Omega quarters. Mira and the other wolfless were already huddled by the door, their faces pale with fear. What's happening? Sarah asked, rushing to join them. The court, Mira whispered. They know about you and the ritual. They're not happy. Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd known there would be consequences. You didn't get close to royalty without drawing attention, but she'd hoped for more time. 2 more nights. That's all she needed. They're calling for your head, said Jana, the youngest Omega, barely 16. Saying you've bewitched the king. That you're trying to steal power. That's insane. I'm trying to help. Doesn't matter. Maya's expression was grim. You're an Omega who's caught the Alpha King's eye. That makes you dangerous to everyone who wants influence over him. Before Sarah could respond, the door burst open. Lydia stood there, breathless and wild-eyed. You need to come. Now, Cale is holding counsel, and they're demanding he hand you over for questioning. Sarah's stomach dropped. Questioning in pack politics usually meant torture, followed by execution if they didn't like your answers. I have to finish the ritual, Sarah said, moving toward her clothes. 2 more nights. You won't survive 2 more hours if Councilman Thorne has his way. Lydia grabbed her arm. He's convinced half the court you're a dark witch. He's saying you cursed Demon in the first place, that this whole thing is manipulation. But Cale knows the truth. Cale is 1 man against a council of 12. He can protect you, but not if they vote to override him. Lydia's grip tightened. Please, come defend yourself. The council chamber was already packed when they arrived. Sarah had never been inside before. Omegas weren't permitted, and the grandeur was overwhelming. Vaulted ceilings, ancient tapestries depicting battles won, and at the center, a massive table where 12 council members sat in judgment. Kale stood at the head of the table, every inch the Alpha King, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders, the barely controlled fury in his eyes as Councilman Thorne, a silver-haired Beta with a face like a hatchet, ranted about corruption and dark magic. The Omega has bewitched not only the cursed beast, but our king himself, Thorne declared, slamming his fist on the table. She appears from nowhere, claims special powers, and suddenly has access to our most sacred. Enough. Kale's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Sarah Ashwood is here under my direct order. She's harming no one. She's an abomination. Another council member shouted. Wolfless, powerless, yet she dares touch what belongs to the royal family. Demon chose her. Kale's words were hard as stone. My brother, trapped for 3 years, allowed her close. That's not witchcraft. That's a miracle we should be grateful for. Or it's proof she cursed him. Thorne stood, his face mottled with rage. Think, my king. What better way to gain power than to curse a prince, then appear as his savior? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled nobles. Sarah felt the weight of dozens of hostile eyes, felt the hatred radiating from people who saw her as nothing but a threat to their carefully maintained hierarchy. These accusations are baseless, Kale said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. And I will not tolerate. Then let her prove it. Dorian, the warrior who'd tried to mount Stormbreaker, stepped forward from where he'd been standing with other soldiers. His smile was cruel. Let her show us this supposed connection. Bring the beast here into the council chamber. If it truly accepts her, we'll believe. Sarah's breath caught. Bringing Damon into a room full of hostile strangers could be disastrous. The noise, the fear, the anger, it could send him into a panic, but Thorne was already nodding, others joining in. An excellent suggestion. Let the Omega prove her claims. Kale's jaw clenched. His eyes met Sarah's across the chamber, and she saw the apology there, the frustration. He was powerful, but he couldn't protect her from the entire court without risking civil war. Very well, Kale said finally. Bring Stormbreaker to the courtyard. We'll settle this now. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by a semicircle of council members and curious pack. Her hands trembled despite her best efforts to remain calm. Kale stood apart from the others, his face an unreadable mask. But she caught the slight nod he gave her. Trust yourself. The stable doors opened, and 2 warriors led Demon out. The great black beast fought every step, ears flattened, eyes rolling with distress. The crowd murmured nervously, several people stepping back. You see? Thorne said triumphantly. The creature is wild, untamed, yet we're supposed to believe this Omega can control it. Sarah ignored him, her focus entirely on Demon. Through their nascent bond, she could feel his fear, his confusion. Too many people. Too much noise. He didn't understand what was happening, only that he was surrounded by threats. Demon, she thought, pushing calm toward him through their connection. It's all right. I'm here. The horse's head snapped toward her, his amber eyes finding hers across the distance. Sarah? His thought was panicked. What's happening? Why they want proof? Proof that you trust me? She took a slow step forward, her hand extended. I know you're scared, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me? Demon went still. The warriors holding his lead stumbled as he stopped fighting them. His entire attention focused on Sarah. For you. He agreed, always. Sarah walked forward slowly, ignoring the gasps from the crowd as the massive beast took a step toward her. Then another. The warriors released the lead, scrambling back, leaving nothing between them but air and courage. "Careful, girl," someone warned. "He'll trample you." But Demon was already lowering his head, pressing his forehead against Sarah's chest in that now familiar gesture of trust and affection. She wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling his heart hammering against his ribs. "You're doing so well," she murmured, both aloud and through their bond. "I'm so proud of you." The courtyard had gone silent. Even Thorn seemed momentarily speechless. Sarah turned to face the council, one hand still resting on Demon's neck. "You wanted proof? Here it is. Prince Demon knows me, trusts me, and with 2 more nights, I can free him from his curse and return him to his family. Or kill him trying." Thorn recovered, his voice sharp. "Dark magic always demands a price. The only dark magic here is your ambition." The words left Sarah's mouth before she could stop them. "You don't want Prince Demon freed. You want him to stay cursed so you can keep whispering poison in the Alpha King's ear, pushing your own agenda without his brother's counsel." Thorn's face went purple. "How dare you? She dares because she's right." Kale's voice cut across the courtyard like thunder. He moved to stand beside Sarah, his presence commanding immediate silence. "Councilman Thorn, you've opposed every attempt to break my brother's curse. You've counseled me to accept his loss and move forward. Now I understand why. My king, I only wanted to spare you false hope. No, you wanted to maintain your influence." Kale's eyes were cold. "My brother was my closest advisor. With him gone, you've gained considerable power. Power you lose the moment he returns." Thorn opened his mouth to protest, but Kale raised his hand. "The ritual continues. Sarah Ashwood is under my personal protection. Anyone who threatens her threatens me." His gaze swept the assembled court, "and I will respond accordingly." The threat was clear. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. "You're letting an Omega manipulate you?" Dorian said, stepping forward. "This is weakness, my king, not strength." Kale turned to face the warrior, and something in his expression made even Dorian falter. "You think protecting someone brave enough to face what all of you fear is weakness? She's shown more courage in 4 days than most of you have in your entire lives." The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. "Council dismissed," Kale said. "I have a kingdom to run and a brother to save. Those who wish to help may stay. The rest can get out." One by one, the council members filed away, most casting venomous looks at Sarah. Thorn was the last to leave, his expression promising future revenge. When they were finally alone, just Sarah, Kale, and Damon in the empty courtyard, the Alpha King's composure cracked. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "I should have anticipated Thorn's move. Should have protected you better." "You protected me perfectly," Sarah said softly. Kale's eyes met hers, and the emotion there made her breath catch. "They could have hurt you. Could have taken you from—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. From him, Damon supplied gently in Sarah's mind. "He can't say it, but he's terrified of losing you." Sarah's heart hammered. Before she could second-guess herself, she stepped forward and placed her hand on Kale's arm. "I'm still here. We're all still here. That's what matters." Kale looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. For a moment, she thought he might pull away. Instead, his hand came up to cover hers, his touch warm and steady. "2 more nights," he said quietly. "Can you do it? Even with the court against you?" "Yes." Sarah squeezed his arm gently. "I'm not afraid of them. You should be, maybe." She managed a small smile. "But I've survived being nothing for 5 years. I can survive being something for 2 more nights." Something shifted in Kale's expression, wonder, perhaps, or the beginning of something deeper. His thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so intimate it made her shiver. Chapter 7. The second night, Sierra arrived at the stable as the sun bled crimson across the horizon, her nerves singing with anticipation and fear. After the morning's confrontation, the pack had watched her every move, hostile eyes tracking her through the lodge, whispers following in her wake, but Lydia had found her in the kitchens with unexpected news. The ritual is working. I can sense it. The curse is weakening. Now, as Sarah entered Diamond's stall, she could see the truth of it. The great black horse seemed more present somehow, his amber eyes brighter, more focused. The connection between them hummed stronger than before, like a rope pulling taut. You came back. Damon's thought wrapped around her like a warm embrace. After everything today, I wasn't sure you would. I made a promise, Sierra said, settling into their now familiar position against the stall wall. Besides, where else would I rather be? With my brother? There was gentle teasing in Damon's tone. I saw the way he looked at you, the way he touched your hand. Heat flooded Sierra's cheeks. That was nothing. He was just Sierra. Damon's thought was fond but firm. I've known Cale my entire life. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're water and he's been dying of thirst. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. He's the alpha king. I'm the woman who's saving his brother. The woman who stood before the entire court and called out Thorne's schemes. The woman who makes him feel again after 3 years of numbness. Damon paused. The woman he's falling in love with? Don't. Sierra pressed her hands against her burning face. Don't say that. It's impossible. Why? Because you're wolfless? Damon's tone sharpened. You're still saying you're less than others? Still believing what they told you? Because it's true. The words burst out of her. I'm broken, Damon. My wolf never came. I'll never be whole. You're the most whole person I've met. Damon shifted, pressing his nose against her shoulder with gentle insistence. Your wolf didn't come because you didn't need one. You were already complete. Already strong enough to survive what would have destroyed most people. Tears burned in Sierra's eyes. That's not how it works, isn't it? Through their bond, she felt Damon's absolute certainty. The awakening is supposed to reveal your true nature. Maybe yours did exactly that. Maybe you were always meant to be different, special. Special, Sierra repeated bitterly. Is that what we're calling cursive now? I'm cursed, Damon said quietly. You're blessed. There's a difference. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of his words settling around them. Outside, night had fully fallen, and moonlight streamed through the windows in silver ribbons. Tell me more about Cale, Sierra said finally, needing to shift the conversation away from her own tangled emotions. What was he like? Before you were cursed? Damon's memories flooded through their connection different from the night before. These were softer, more intimate. 2 boys wrestling in tall grass, their father watching with rare approval. Cale helping Damon climb a tree that was too tall, never letting go even when Damon's foot slipped. The way Cale had held him when their mother died, both of them shaking with sobs they couldn't contain. He was my hero, Damon shared. Still is, but he's forgotten how to be anything except a king. The curse didn't just trap me, it trapped him too. In duty, in guilt. In a version of himself that's all armor and no heart. He has a heart, Sierra said softly. I've seen it. Yes, with you. Damon's thought was tinged with hope. You make him remember who he used to be, who he still could be. I can't, Sarah stopped, unsure how to finish. Can't be what he needs. Can't be worthy of a king. Can't risk hoping for something so impossible. Why not? Damon challenged. What's the worst that could happen? He rejects you? Sierra, you've survived rejection your entire life. You're still standing. Still fighting. What's one more risk? Because this one would break me? Sierra whispered. The others, my family, the pack, they didn't know me. Not really. But Kale, he sees me, all of me. If he turned away, it would destroy something I didn't even know I had left. The vulnerability in her own words made her flinch, but Demon's response was gentle. He won't turn away. I know my brother. He's terrified of exactly what you're terrified of. That you'll see who he really is beneath the crown and find him wanting. Sierra blinked. That's absurd. He's powerful, respected, and lonely. So lonely it's killing him. Demon's sorrow rippled through their bond. 3 years I've watched him lock himself away. 3 years of him talking to me like I'm truly just a horse, never admitting how much it hurts. He thinks he has to be invincible, that showing weakness means failing everyone. That's not. Sarah paused, thinking of the moment in the courtyard. The way Kale had almost said he was terrified of losing her before catching himself. He thinks vulnerability is failure. Yes, and you're the first person who's made him want to be vulnerable anyway. The thought terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Sarah leaned her head against Demon's neck, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek. What if I can't break the curse? She asked quietly. What if tomorrow night fails and you're trapped forever? Then I'll have had these nights with you. These moments of being seen, being known. Demon's thought was fierce with gratitude. That's more than I had before. More than I dare hope for. It's not enough. Maybe not. But it's something. And sometimes something is everything. They talked deep into the night about hope and fear, about the weight of expectations and the freedom of letting them go. Demon shared memories of his mother, of the woman he'd loved and lost, of battles fought and the moment the arrow had struck, and he'd known with terrible certainty that his life was ending. I don't remember the curse taking hold, he admitted. Just darkness, then waking as this, trapped, voiceless, his thought shuddered. The first year was the worst. I tried to tell Kale I was still here. Tried everything. He just kept mourning me like I was dead. That must have been agony. It was, but it taught me something too. Demon's tone shifted, becoming thoughtful. How much we take for granted. The ability to speak, to touch, to be recognized as ourselves. You understand that? It's why we connected so easily. Sarah nodded against his neck. We're both invisible in different ways. We're invisible, Demon corrected. You see me now, and Kale sees you. Maybe that's what breaking curses really means, being witnessed. Being known. The words resonated in Sarah's chest. True in a way that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the human need for connection. As the second hour passed, Sarah felt the ritual's magic building around them, stronger than the first night, more insistent. It pulsed through their bond like a heartbeat, like the threads Kale's grandmother had written about were slowly knitting together. It's working. Demon whispered, wonder in his thought. I can feel it. Feel myself becoming more me. How? Sarah asked, hardly daring to hope. It's like I'm remembering I have hands. That I have a voice. The horse body still traps me, but there's more of me inside it now. More consciousness. More humanity. He paused. One more night, Sarah. I think one more night might do it. Joy and fear warred in her chest. One more night until Demon was free. One more night until everything changed. What happens after? She asked. When you're human again? I don't know. For the first time, Demon sounded uncertain. 3 years is a long time. The pack thinks I'm dead. My position, my life, it's all gone. I'll have to rebuild everything. You won't be alone, Sarah promised. I'll help however I can. I know you will. But Sarah, he hesitated. When I'm free, when I'm human again, you and Kale, you'll need to figure out what you are to each other. What you could be. There's nothing to figure out. We're nothing. You're everything, Damon corrected gently. And he knows it. He's just afraid. Don't let his fear steal your chance at happiness. Promise me, Dot, before Sarah could respond. Footsteps sounded outside the stall. Her head snapped up, pulse jumping with alarm. But it was Cale who appeared at the door, his face shadowed and drawn. I'm sorry, he said roughly. I tried to stay away. Let you have your time with Demon. But he stopped, jaw clenching. I needed to see that you were safe. The vulnerability in his admission made Sarah's throat tight. I'm safe. Cale's eyes met hers across the stall, and the longing there was undeniable. Behind Sarah, Damon nickered softly, a sound of approval, of encouragement. Tell him. Damon urged through their bond. Tell him you see him too, but the words caught in Sarah's throat. Trapped by fear and years of believing she wasn't worthy of wanting Dot, so instead, she simply held Cale's gaze and let him see the truth in her eyes and in the moonlit stable. Surrounded by magic and possibility, something shifted between them, inevitable as the tide, unstoppable as fate. Tomorrow would be the final night. Tomorrow, everything would change. Chapter 8. The day between Sarah awoke to sunlight streaming through the Omega quarters and the sound of urgent knocking. She stumbled to the door, still half asleep, to find Lydia standing there with a bundle of fabric in her arms. Put these on, the healer said, pushing past her into the room. Quickly, what's happening? Sarah asked, eyeing the fine clothes, a dress in deep forest green, far too elegant for an Omega. The Alpha King has summoned you to the private dining hall. For breakfast. Lydia's eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement. Alone? Sarah's heart stuttered. That's not we can't. He's the Alpha King. He can do whatever he wants. Lydia began helping Sarah out of her threadbare nightgown. And what he wants, apparently, is to have breakfast with you. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood outside the private dining hall, her palms sweating despite the cool morning air. The dress Lydia had brought fit perfectly, which meant Cale had commissioned it specifically for her. The thought made her pulse race. The guard opened the door, and Sarah stepped inside. The room was intimate, nothing like the grand hall where the pack took meals. A small table sat before a window overlooking the forest, set for two. And there, standing with his back to her, was Cale. He dressed simply, no crown, no formal regalia. Just dark trousers and a white shirt that did nothing to hide the breadth of his shoulders. When he turned, the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice careful. I know it's irregular. Irregular, Sarah repeated, a nervous laugh escaping. That's one word for it. A ghost of a smile touched Cale's lips. Sit, please, I won't bite. But as she moved to the table, his eyes tracked her with an intensity that suggested biting might be exactly what he wanted to do. The thought sent heat rushing through her veins. They sat in awkward silence for a moment, before servants appeared with food far more than two people could eat. Fresh bread, honey, cured meats, fruit that must have cost a fortune this time of year. When they were alone again, Cale cleared his throat. I wanted to apologize, he said. For yesterday. For not protecting you better from the council. You protected me perfectly, Sarah said softly. You stood up to them. Claimed me in front of everyone. Not as publicly as I should have. Cale's jaw clenched. Thorn is still spreading poison. Saying you've seduced me, that I'm making decisions based on... He stopped himself. Based on what? Sarah prompted, her heart hammering. Cale's amber eyes met hers, burning with something that made her stomach flip. Emotion, desire, things a king isn't supposed to feel for someone like... He caught himself again. Someone like me, Sarah finished quietly. A wolfless Omega? Someone who makes me forget how to be careful. The words came out rough, honest. Someone who walks into my brother's prison and sees a person instead of a monster. Someone who stands before my entire court and doesn't flinch. Sarah's breath caught. Your Majesty, Kale. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something intimate. When we're alone, I want you to call me Kale. The request felt more intimate than any touch. Kale, she whispered, testing his name on her tongue. His eyes darkened. Say it again, Kale. Braver this time. He made it sound low in his throat that was pure wolf, pure want. Do you have any idea what you do to me? No, Sarah admitted, her voice shaking. I don't understand any of this. Why you'd even look at someone like me? Kale stood abruptly, moving around the table until he was crouched before her chair. His hands braced on the armrests, caging her in. This close, she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, could smell pine and rain and wild things. Look at you. His voice was raw. Sarah, I can't stop looking at you. Can't stop thinking about you. Can't sleep because I'm lying awake wondering if you're safe, if you're warm, if you're... He stopped, jaw clenching. 3 years I've been numb. 3 years of existing but not living. Then you walked into that stable and everything came roaring back. Sarah's hands trembled as she lifted them to his face, cupping his jaw. His eyes closed at the contact, his breath shuddering out. I'm terrified, she admitted. Of this. Of you. Of what happens when tonight is over and Damon is free and you don't need me anymore. Kale's eyes snapped open, fierce and bright. Not need you? Sarah, the words seemed to catch in his throat. After tonight, when the ritual is complete, I want you to stay here in the lodge. Not as an Omega. As us what? Her heart was thunder in her ears, as mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it sent liquid heat pooling in her stomach. If you'll have me, if you're not repulsed by the idea of Sarah kissed him, she didn't think about it, didn't plan it. She just leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, swallowing whatever self-deprecating thing he was about to say. For a heartbeat, Kale went rigid with shock. Then he groaned, one hand coming up to cup the back of her head. As he deepened the kiss dot, it was nothing like. Sarah had imagined the first kiss would be soft and sweet and gentle. This was fire and desperation and 3 years of grief finding release. Kale kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. Like she was the answer to every question he'd forgotten how to ask Dot when they finally broke apart. Both breathing hard, Kale rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling in love with you, he said roughly. I know I shouldn't. I know it's too fast, too impossible. But I won't lie about it. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. I'm falling in love with you too. And it terrifies me. We'll be terrified together. Kale's thumb brushed across her cheekbone. After tonight, after Demon is free, we'll figure this out. Together, if you want. I want, Sarah interrupted. More than I've wanted anything in my life. The smile that broke across Kale's face was transformative, young and joyful, and so beautiful it made her ache. He kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise. They spent the morning together, talking about everything and nothing. Kale told her about the weight of the crown, about the loneliness of leadership, about his fear that he'd never be enough. Sarah told him about her years in the human world, about learning to survive on determination alone, about the hollow place where her wolf should have been. I used to think I was broken, she admitted as they walked through the private gardens behind the lodge. That something was fundamentally wrong with me. And now? Kale asked, his hand warm in hers. Now, I think maybe I was just waiting. For the right moment. The right person. She looked up at him. For you. Kale stopped walking, pulling her close. You're perfect exactly as you are. Wolf or no wolf. Power or no power. You're perfect. I'm not. You are. His voice was fierce. And after tonight, I'm going to spend every day proving it to you. But as the sun began its descent toward evening, reality crept back in. Tonight was the final ritual. Tonight would determine Demon's fate and all of theirs. I should go prepare, Sarah said reluctantly. The moon will rise soon. Kale's grip on her hand tightened. Sarah, if something goes wrong, if the ritual fails, or if there's danger, there won't be. But if there is. His eyes were haunted. Promise me you'll protect yourself first. That you won't sacrifice yourself for, I promise nothing, Sarah interrupted gently. Because if saving Demon means risking myself, I'll do it. Just like he risked himself for you. That's what love is, Kale. That's what family does. Kale pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I can't lose you. Not now. Not when I've just found you. You won't. Sarah pressed a kiss to his jaw. Trust me, I do. The words were a vow. More than I've trusted anyone in years. As Sarah walked toward the stables, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, she felt the weight of what was coming. Tonight wasn't just about breaking a curse. It was about choosing a future. About believing she was worthy of love and family and belonging. The stable doors stood open, moonlight already beginning to spill across the threshold. Inside, Demon waited a cursed prince trapped in an animal's body, counting on her to set him free. Behind her, she knew Kale was watching from his tower window, his heart as much in her hands as hers was in his, and somewhere in the shadows, enemies waited for her to fail. But Sarah Ashwood, wolfless, powerless, broken Omega, walked into that stable with her head high and her heart full of purpose. Tonight, she would prove that the most powerful magic of all was simply being seen, simply being loved. The final ritual was about to begin. Chapter 9. The breaking the stable was silent except for Demon's breathing and the distant call of night birds. Sarah entered the stall with steady hands despite the fear coiling in her stomach. This was it, the final night. Success or failure. Freedom or eternal imprisonment. Demon was waiting, his massive form backlit by moonlight streaming through the high windows. But something was different tonight. The air itself felt charged, electric with possibility. You came, he said, and his mental voice was stronger than ever before, crisp and clear, as if he were standing beside her in human form. Of course I came. Sarah moved to his side, her hand finding its familiar place on his neck. Are you ready? I've been ready for 3 years. A pause, heavy with emotion. But Sarah, if this doesn't work, I need you to know something. Don't. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder. Don't say goodbye. Not yet, not goodbye. Thank you. Demon's thought wrapped around her like an embrace. You gave me back my humanity before I even had my body. That's a gift I can never repay. Tears burned in Sarah's eyes. You don't need to repay it. That's not how love works. Love. Demon's tone warmed with affection. Yes, that's what this is, isn't it? Not romantic love, but something just as powerful. You're my sister now, Sarah, in all the ways that matter. And you're my brother. The words felt right, felt true. So let's bring you home. She settled into position, her back against the wall, one hand on Demon's neck and the other over her own heart. The moon had risen to its peak, full and bright, flooding the stable with silver light. Tell me what you remember, Sarah said softly. Before the curse, the last moment you were fully yourself. Demon's memories flooded through their connection, not gentle this time, but overwhelming in their intensity. She saw through his eyes, the battlefield, chaos, and screaming. Kale fighting 3 enemies at once, blood streaming from a wound on his arm. The archer in the trees, arrow knocked and aimed at Kale's unprotected back. I didn't think, Demon shared. Just moved. Threw myself between them. Sarah felt the arrow's impact, the burning agony of silver piercing flesh. Felt demon hitting the ground, Kale's anguished scream, the taste of blood and dirt. Then her. The witch, standing over me while I died. The memory was dark, twisted. She whispered words in a language I didn't understand. Said I'd taken her son, so she'd take Kale's brother. Not my life, that would be mercy. She'd take my humanity instead. Trap me between worlds, neither alive nor dead, man nor beast. She was wrong, Sarah said fiercely. You're not trapped between. You're both. You've always been both? What do you mean? Being human isn't about having the right body or the right voice. It's about connection. About choosing to love even when it costs you everything. Sarah's voice shook with conviction. You chose to save Kale. That was the most human thing anyone could do. The curse didn't take your humanity, it just hit it where most people couldn't see. But you saw, Demon whispered. Because I know what it's like to have people look through you. To be invisible. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, focusing all her energy on their connection. But you're not invisible, Demon. Not to me. Not to Kale. Not to anyone who truly matters. The air began to shimmer, magic rising like heat off summer pavement. Sarah felt it building in her chest, radiating outward through her connection to Demon. It wasn't her magic, she had none, but something else. Something that came from being witnessed, from being known. The curse is breaking. Damon's thought was odd. I can feel it. Feel myself, then everything exploded. Magic detonated through the stable like a shock wave, sending hay flying and making the very walls tremble. Sarah was thrown backward, her head cracking against the wooden slats. Through blurred vision, she saw Demon's form begin to shimmer and change, horse and man flickering like a candle flame. But something was wrong. The magic felt twisted, dark, resisting. The witch anchored the curse to my death wound. Demon's voice was panicked. It won't let go. It's trying to know. Sarah scrambled forward on hands and knees, reaching for him even as pain lanced through her skull. You're not dying. Not again. I won't let you. Sarah, dip back. If the curse lashes out, but she was already touching him, both hands pressed against his neck where horse met magic met man. The curse's darkness coiled around her like serpents, trying to push her away, to protect itself. She felt it probing at her, searching for her wolf, for the pack bond that would make her vulnerable. It found nothing, because she had nothing to lose. No wolf to corrupt. No pack bond to sever. She was empty, and in that emptiness, she was untouchable. You can't hurt me, Sarah said, her voice ringing with certainty. Because I've already survived losing everything. Your darkness has no power here. The curse recoiled as if burned. And in that moment of weakness, Sarah drove forward with the only weapon she had, love. Pure, uncomplicated, unconditional love for the brother she'd found. For the family she'd chosen, for the future they all deserved. The curse-shattered light exploded outward. Blinding and beautiful, and Sarah felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, arms that were human, warm, alive. I've got you, a voice said, a real voice, rough with disuse and emotion. You did it, sister. You saved me. Sarah forced her eyes open and found herself looking up at a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with Kale's amber eyes and dark hair that curled around his ears. Demon, human, free. You're beautiful, she breathed, then started laughing through her tears. You're real, thanks to you. Demon was crying too, human tears streaming down a human face. 3 years, Sarah. 3 years of silence. And now I can, his voice broke completely, and he pulled her into a fierce embrace. Both of them shaking with relief and joy in the overwhelming reality of what they'd accomplished. The stable door crashed open. Kale stood in the doorway, his face white with shock. He'd obviously felt the magical explosion, had come running. Now he stared at his brother, his human brother, like he was seeing a ghost. Demon? The word was barely a whisper. Damon looked up, his arms still around Sarah. Hello, brother. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Kale was across the stable, dropping to his knees before them, his hands reaching out to touch Demon's face, as if to confirm he was real. You're alive, Kale said, his voice breaking. You're human. You're home. Demon caught Kale's wrists, pressing his brother's palm against his chest, where his heart beat strong and steady. I'm home. Kale made a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and pulled Demon into his arms. The two brothers clung to each other. 3 years of grief and guilt and desperate hope finally finding release. Sierra tried to ease away, to give him privacy, but Demon's hand shot out and caught hers. No, he said firmly. You're part of this. Part of us. He looked at Kale. She saved me. She saw me when no one else could. She's family. Kale's eyes met Sarah's over Demon's shoulder, burning with an emotion so intense it stole her breath. I know, he said roughly. She saved us both. Then Kale was pulling her into the embrace too, and the three of them knelt there in the hay and moonlight, a broken Omega, a cursed prince, and a king who'd forgotten how to hope. Now they were just 3 people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen love over fear. Thank you, Kale whispered against Sarah's hair. Thank you for giving him back to me. Thank you for letting me, Sarah replied. For trusting me always. Kale's arms tightened around them both. From now on, always. Outside, the moon began its descent toward dawn. The curse was broken. The prince was free, and in the stable where a miracle had just occurred, 3 hearts beat in perfect synchrony, bound not by magic or pack law, but by something far more powerful. By choice, by love, by family. The nightmare was finally over. The real story was just beginning.